the last reporter for this subject, and we are also going to discuss the last chapter of the book, which is chapter 16, Integrative Case Conceptualization. Okay, let's start. Grade counseling and case conceptualization. This one is the grade counseling has been discussed before, or the grade counselor has been discussed before, that besides from the early charge or early fees in the session, what distinguishes or the difference between a grade counselor from a friend, bartender, or hairdresser is that what each does with the information that is being shared by the client. So first, the friend, bartenders, and hairdresser prefer to do one of two things when hearing a heartfelt story of someone's struggle. Um, like it's either provide an advice to the person or show empathy, or can do both. While counselor and therapist do something very different. Great counselor have a deeper understanding of clients, often a more sensible and compassionate story than clients tell themselves. Um, in this, they will create a map of understanding of the inner life of the person or the client. And that map will be the case conceptualization that will lead the counselor to be more skillful and competent in counseling. That in fact, it is the primary reason why we need counseling theories at all. That if you have a strong case conceptualization of what is going on and what to do in a client, it is clear that you have the evidence of like apply it to the client. Therefore, the counseling journey is reasonably simple and easy if you can provide and establish a clear and meaningful case conceptualization. And in the counseling theories that provide counselor with the unique lenses through which they may view the problems that client bring to them, the theories will encourage counselors to see clients and their concerns in a wider and broader and more systematical way, almost like a detailed map. And in each of the chapter, with the earlier chapter 13 to 14, that have been reported by our classmates about the case conceptualization that uses a single model. Well, in this chapter, we will learn about a comprehensive case conceptualization approach that will help us consider a single case from a multiple theoretical perspective. So, with a multiple, not just a single, which is ideal for learning about each theory and the interconnection across theories. And this will provide an excellent tool for thinking more wider and broadly about the case. Next one is the realistic expectation. Um, One of the first most important pala skill that in counseling is that diba, building rapport or relationship with the client, a professional relationship with the client. While the second one is the case conceptualization itself. But case conceptualization is the hardest skill to learn because a comprehensive integrative case conceptualization requires that we all know and understand and apply most of what theories from chapter 3 to 14 or what is in the book. But in that said, case conceptualization is also the most empowering, liberating counseling competency. Why? Because once you can do this, you will know how to handle almost every situation. So, the first time you complete the case conceptualization, and each time you do another one, you will find that you can complete it more quickly and easily because you are learning how to integrate and use the theoretical concepts. Like, if familiar na ta sa isa ka butang na sige balik-balik, then naay katong nga butang is naay nagabalik-balik pero naapoy combination nga bag-o. So para sa to ano siya, mas madali siya and mapaspas pod ang process kay familiar naman siya, murag gamay na lang ang like bag-o ato nga na-combine. So doing this, once you learn what doing this, you will learn what to listen for and ask about in the session with the client. So kung familiar na ta sa ano and like balik ano na siya, we are more comprehend about listening to our client. Like it is easily to ask question na lang sa atong client and to listen. Then the next time you do it, you begin to better understand how the dynamics in one section or correlate with another with dynamics in another. Like gingon ako ganina that we will learn here the theories from not all but some major theories and their interconnection across theories. So one section correlate with the dynamics in another. Then after you do 10 to 20 of this case conceptualization, your ability to conceptualize will significantly increase your counseling abilities both in session intervention and in out of session communication with your supervisor and other professionals. Next slide is elements of case conceptualization. As counselors become more experienced and case conceptualization takes place primarily in their heads, while clients are talking, it happens so fast that often they have a hard time tracing their steps. New counselors need to take things more slowly also. It is like more like similar to practicing a new dance step, like in our PE good. Then like naatay mo on the new moves. Then this new moves has to be put down into small parts para ano jud sakto jud kung asa atong kamot, asa atong tiil, so hinahinay like that. Hinahinay nato siyang like i-process atong mind what's the next step. Then this will enable us to bring those pieces together more easily and smoothly before it becomes natural for our like final presentation. So natural na lang siya sa tuwa kay ano man ito siya broken into pieces. Then we then put it together, then it will become more natural to our. Then murag ingani pod siya ang case conceptualization. It is similar to case conceptualization. So here are the elements of the case conceptualization. First is the introduction of client. In this, we will define who is the client. It is either the individual, a couple, or a family. And we'll identify the demographics, the age, ethnicity, language, job, school, grade in school, and such. Presenting concern, specify how all the parties involved are defining the problem. So there would be the description of the client and also the description of the significant of the client. So how will they define the client's problem? Like how can a family or friend, a school, a work, legal system, or society or community define the client's problem? Then next is the background information. Summarize recent changes, including precipitating events and related historical background. Like the background, a brief background history of the client, and also the brief background of the family itself. Then the strengths and diversity. Identify personal relation and spiritual strength as well as the resources and limitation related to diversity issues. Later on, we will discuss that. And theoretical case conceptualization, again, the interconnection of the theories across theories, like the psychodynamic, humanistic, cognitive, family, systemic, and solution-based and cultural discourse conceptualization. Next slide, and let's dive into the introduction to client. In this case conceptualization, start by identifying the most common in client, like the demographic features that relate to treatment. Also, to conceptualize treatment more fully, it is best to also identify the significant others in the client's life, like the partners, children, and or parents. Common demographic information for the client and the significant others includes the following: the gender, age, ethnicity, and race. You can also add the relational status and sexual orientation of the client, the current occupation of work status or grade in school. It's either an adult or a child. So could I identify other information such as living situation, extracurricular activity, or immigration status. It is important to include also. Then, to protect client information and to easily track who is who, typically use the following symbols. If there is more than one, add the age after the abbreviation, like this in example in the PPT. CF, which is child female, and her age is 7 years old. So next slide is the presenting concerns. First is the client description of the problem. So how can he define if there is a problem? Because sometimes children didn't notice that there is a problem. So to add on this, significant other or family description of the problem is important to add on, because clients sometimes didn't observe that he or she has the problem itself. So that each person who is talking about the problem has different definition of the problem, and opinions and description of the problem by the various people involved have a single problem definition, and this will help because to the treatment, because it has different perspective of different significant others of the client. But sometimes it will be more liable rather than the asset when there is like too much information from the client. So ma-confuse na si counselor like that. So a description of the presenting problem should include the following: the reason or reasons of each client states he or she is seeking counseling has been referred, why she is in the counseling, or he has been referred to, why she has been referred to go to a counseling session. Or then the next one is any information from the referring agent, is either teacher, doctor, psychiatrist, etc., and his or own description of the problem. And like what I've said, a brief history of the problem and the family, if applicable only. Description of the attempt, solutions, and outcome of these attempts. So if she defined that there is a problem and she attempt to solve it, you can the clients can also like share it to the counselor. And lastly, the perspectives from significant persons and institutions in the client's broader social network includes professional associates, religion, organization, and close, and so on. So the significant others description of the problem of the client. So the next is the background information. It is considered the facts of the case. However, sometimes counselor have to, like, chose the words or language to put facts and to the right, like, words or languages. Because, like, for example, when a client shared a very, like, positive positive life or description about him or her, but in the other side, in a significant others of the client, like her mother, she tell the counselor that her father and the client's mother has been divorced because of the father is very alcoholic. Then it will paint a very different pictures of the same client. So it is very crucial to, like, put to have a choice of words and to really emphasize the particular details. Because based on the research about the importance of the counseling relationship and of hope, it is recommended that counselors write the background section in such ways that the counselor and anyone reading the report, including the potentially the client, would have a positive impression and hope for the client, because these two factors have an effect on the outcome of the treatment. And then additionally, the counselors include information such as the following: the history of childhood and adulthood abuse and trauma, including childhood abuse, rape, domestic violence, natural disasters, war, witnessing violence, and so on; history of substance abuse by client's family, and significant others; precipitating events that are associated with the onset of the problem, such as the recent changes, breakup, losses, development milestones, career movement, and so on. Related historical background, including history of mental disorders, previous counseling, significant health concerns, and so on. So next is the client strength and diversity. And client strength and sources should be the first things. Why? Because based on the counselor that he discovered that after reading about the presenting problem, the introduction, the background information, and so on and so forth, counselor was often feeling quite hopeless about the case. However, on reading the strength section at the end, it would immediately perk up and finding and having hope and deep respect and even excitement about the clients and their future. Because in the section of introduction to client, presenting problem, background information, it all the description could be all the description in there could be like problem and issue of the clients. But when the counselor find out that there is a strength in the clients, it will give him or her hope that could uplift, that there still be a chance to be there's still a chance to be to have a hope and strengths and strengthen the possible of being guided. So to conceptualize a full spectrum of client strengths and sources, counselors can include strength at several levels: personal, relational, spiritual. In addition, it is useful to identify specific resources and limitation due to the diversity factors such as the ethnicity, religion, spirituality, gender, social, economic, class, and ability, and so forth. In clients' personal individual strengths, when assessing this, we can begin by reviewing two general categories of strengths: abilities and personal qualities. In identifying abilities, it may give client or counselors a creative ideas about how to solve current problems. Like a question here where and how a client's functioning in daily life, how to get the sessions. Are they able to maintain a job, a hobby, a relationship? Are there any special talents either now or in the past? That if you look, you will always find a range of abilities with even the most dysfunctional of clients, especially if you consider the past as well as the present and the future. And next one is the personal qualities. Another area where counselors can identify client strength is the personal qualities, ironically. The best place to find this is embedded within the presenting problem or complaint. Usually the things that brings them to see counselor is the flip side of another strength. And here are the list of common problems and strengths that may be found in the clients with a presenting problem. The depression that a depressed person could be aware of what others think and feel, connected to others or desires connections, and an anxiety, pay attentions and details, desires to perform well, carefully and thoughtful about actions, able to plan for future and anticipate the potential obstacles because anxiety is we are very future oriented, arguing, stand up for self and or beliefs, fight injustice, wants the relationship to work, has to hope for better things for other or self. Anger, in touch with feelings and thoughts, stand up against injustice, believes in fairness, able to sense one's boundaries and when they are crossed, overwhelmed, concerned about other needs, thoughtful, able to see the big picture and set goals and pursue them better. Next is the relational or social strength and sources. Social support network, of course, the family, the friends, professionals, teachers, co-workers, bosses, neighbors, church members, salespeople, and numerous others in people's life can be part of a network of social support that helps the client in a physical and emotional spiritual ways. Physical forms of support includes people who may help with running errands, picking up the children, or doing tasks around the house. Emotional support may take the form of listening, of course, and helping resolve relation problems. Communication support includes friendship and acceptance provided by any community and is almost always there in some form with a person who may be feeling treated bad or marginalized because of the culture, sexual orientation, language, or religion, or similar factors. These communities are critical for coping with the inherent stress of treating bad in a community or society. Simply naming, recognizing, appreciating that there is a support can immediately increase a client's sense of hope and reduce the feelings of loneliness. Yes. This is very, very true that if you have somebody to like just to hang on or just to be there, will be a very good support to help you in some many ways that could help you in so many ways. Next is the spiritual resources. Counselor or increase their awareness of how clients' spiritual sources can be used to address problems they bring to counseling. Counselors should be familiar with the major religious tradition in their community, such as Protestantism, Catholicism, Judaism, Islam, New Age religions, Native American practices, and other as needed. And here are the questions to assess spirituality. And if the client will answer these questions, counselors can create a map of the client's world that can be used to develop conversation and apply an intervention that are meaningful and good fit for the client and can accurately understand the client map of the life that reveals what logic and action will motivate the client to make changes. spiritually. And that is for the strength. And let's move on to diversity. Diversity issues refer to characteristics such as age, gender, sexual orientation, cultural background, immigration status, social economic status, religion, regional community, language, and so on and so forth. And much like strength and symptoms in most cases, each form of diversity brings with it both unique and resources and limitations. Counselor need to take time to think about how client situation is affected by limitation created by the diversity issues, such as living in poverty or being an immigrant, and consider this when conceptualizing the client situation. And another for example is that a gay and a lesbian are being treated badly in the society in many ways and are often target to abused, and this will lead to trauma and will add on to the overall level of psychological stress to them. However, because of this treatment bad in the society or community, they tend to develop unusual strong social and friendship connection that will help them to not only cope but also to thrive. And another example is that other culture and other ethnic group that are being treated badly in the society. Um, they also tend to provide a stronger social and religious connection that provide them a sense of belongingness and support to their own community. And that would be all for the introduction, presenting concern, background, and strength and diversity of the client. Next will be the theoretical conceptualization using the major schools of theory, the interconnection across theories. And this will be discussed by my group mates. And thank you guys for listening. Have a good day.
Good day, my name is Shinji Miflainam Socorro. So to continue, we have here theoretical conceptualization. The remainder of this form includes 5 potential areas of conceptualization using the major schools of theory covered in this book. We have here psychodynamic Adlerian, humanistic existential, cognitive behavioral, family systemic, and postmodern feminist. So if you want a single theory to develop a theory-specific conceptualization, you can also use the viewing case conceptualization. Next is the psychodynamic and Adlerian conceptualization. So we have here the psychodynamic conceptualization, wherein you have to check and describe 2 to 4 most commonly used defense mechanisms of the client. So for the acting out, you have to describe denial, describe displacement, describe help rejecting, complaining, describe, and so on. We have your psychodynamic defense mechanisms refers to automatic psychological processes that the person uses to ward off anxiety and external stressors, and thus describes strategies the person frequently uses to handle problems. So this is what we usually use when we protect ourselves from anxious thoughts or feelings. And the person may be conscious or unconscious about using a defense mechanism. Generally, the more aware one is of using a defense mechanism, the more functional he or she is. Such as kato mga tao na nagagamit og sublimation, like ginapagaw sila ilang gibati through productive sa mga productive na mga bagay. So this is the more common list of defense mechanisms. So we have here acting out. Acting out refers to dealing with inner emotional conflict through action rather than reflecting on feelings. This action may or may not translate to bad behavior, but rather to a pattern of engaging in a behavior to deal with inner conflict. So acting out usually kay instead na mo ingon o nasuko ko sa imo or kanang ingon sila sa ilang gibati, they tend to lash out or manumbag or something mamisikal. Denial refers to refusing to acknowledge a painful reality that is readily apparent to others. So, denial ka ng pag kanang ginadenay na sa tao ang mga tinuod nga nahitabo, especially pag it's too uncomfortable good to accept, so they tend to reject it miski daghan na kayog evidence nga ing ana gyud ang nahitabo gina try gyapon nila og deny, especially if dili siya kaaya-aya nga reality. And displacement refers to in which a person redirects a negative emotion from its original source to a less threatening recipient. Example ani kaning sa family, for example nag-away ang parents tapos naa sila gamay na anak pag ang father kay dili siya makayawyaw sa mother, so ditoan na lang siya magyawyaw sa gamay nila anak, which is dili makasukol. So yeah. Help rejecting complaining, commonly observed in counseling sessions. Help rejecting complaining is just like it sounds. A person deals with stress by complaining but invariably rejects suggestions, advice, or help that others offer. So, help rejecting complaining kay self-explanatory na kayo siya. But I think daghan taga-ila nga ingani ka na sige sila pangayo og tabang pero gina-reject nila ang mga tabang or mga suggestion, advice, whatsoever. So humor can be used as a defense mechanism whereby a person manages emotional conflict by identifying the amusing or ironic qualities of the situation. Humor can be used in a highly adaptive way, and it can also be used so rigidly that it almost becomes a form of denial. So the people tend to use humor to ease the uncomfortable or upsetting situation, to lighten the mood. Pero usahay, it can also be destructive when we use humor in the expense of other people's insecurities whatsoever. So, passive aggression, another of the more frequently cited defense mechanisms. Passive aggression refers to when a person portrays a facade of cooperation but then covertly resists, resents, or undermines, thus indirectly expressing aggression. Some Ang example ani sa passive aggression kanang for example sa groupmates pag kanang naiisa against sa imong idea kay instead na i-confront kaniya mag either magpadungog siya or ilibak kaniya. So yeah. So for the projection, it refers to falsely attributing one's own unacceptable feelings, impulses, or wishes onto another, typically without being aware of what is going on. So projection, in clinical practice, this is often seen in the case where one partner has cheated and then projects these intentions onto the faithful partner. This can happen whether or not the infidelity has been discovered. So, ang partner kay nag-cheat tapos marag dili niya madawat or marag maigo yung ego na siya ang nakabuhat ato. So, gina-project niya sa iyang partner, marag ginasulti niya sa iyang partner nga iyang partner ang nag-cheat, marag gina-project niya yung ginaibuhat, especially pag wala pa siya nasakpan. And in another case, marag insecurity good sa isa ka tao, marag ginasulti niya sa imo. For example, moingon siya na, ay, ganyan ka, like, insecure ka kasi kaya, pero in reality, siya jud ang ing ato, marag gina-project niya ang iyahang mga unwanted feelings or unacceptable feelings sa imuha. Projective identification refers to a person who is aware of having the unacceptable feelings but inappropriately justifies them by claiming that they are reasonable reactions to the other person, which often results in the other person acting in such a way as to confirm the projection, making it difficult to clarify who did what to whom first. So, ang projective identification kanang gina-project sa isa ka tao iyang unacceptable na qualities sa iyang kaila or iyang close, iyang uyab. Tapos katong projected qualities gina-internalize sa subject, for example, ingnan ka og bugo, miski dili good, tapos ma-internalize nimo siya, makaingon ka na, hala basig bugo sa di ay ko, maging anak good. So, for the rationalization, a favorite of the educated, rationalization refers to dealing with emotional conflict by concealing true motivations, by developing elaborate but incorrect explanation for thoughts, feelings, and emotions. So, rationalization, kay mo gina explain nimo imong unacceptable behavior, mo gina justify nimo imong mali na gibuhat. For example, ani kanang student nga nag-cheat sa test, a student who cheats in a test, moingon na siya na, I only cheated on a few questions, mura gamay na akong gisundugan, pero kabalo ko sa tanan answers sa uban. So murag and we're gonna justify niya pero ang ending ato nag-cheat good gihapon siya. So, reaction formation refers to dealing with inner conflict by engaging in actions that are diametrically opposed to denied thoughts, feelings, and behaviors. So, in reaction formation, you take the opposite belief because the true belief causes you anxiety. Ang pinaka-common na example ani is kanang a boy may really like a girl but act like he does not and disinterested when around her. So, nakagusto siya sa babae pero maraglahi iyang ginapakita marag like disinterested or kanang wala siya pakialam or whatsoever. Tapos another example is when a person despises the boss kung dili siya ganahan sa iyang boss and ginasulti niya sa halos tanan na ganahan siya sa iyang boss na ayos kayo siya na boss pero ang para sa iya iyang belief kay dili siya ganahan kay the way mag-handle or something like that. So, repression refers to eliminating unacceptable desires, thoughts, or experiences from conscious awareness, the extent that the person is unaware of their inner conflict. So, repression is kanang gina-repress na to atong thought or mga gina-bury na to atong mga thoughts, especially if na-associate siya sa atong mga most threatening na memories. So, splitting refers to the inability to see an individual, self-included, as having both positive and negative qualities. Instead, a person swings from seeing people as all good or all bad, idealizing or villainizing. Example, ani ka na usually sa mga bata, they see all heroes as good, tapos they see all villains are bad. Like they see someone in a single attribute lang jud like all positive or all negative like tanan actions beliefs ana nga tao kay good na siya tanan like no kanang all good or all bad lang jud like no middle ground. Sublimation refers to dealing with internal conflict by channeling potentially inappropriate feelings or impulses into socially acceptable activities such as challenging aggression through sports or sadness through art. So in sublimation, we channel our unacceptable thoughts and feelings into harmless and possibly even productive and beneficial activities. So, yeah, pag sad ka kay, or bad trip ka kay mag-drawing na lang ka or mag-picture or something related sa art or whatsoever na feel mo mas maka-benefit kaysa sa mas makalala sa mong gibati. So this is how you conceptualize the object relations and attachment problems. First, you must describe the relationship of the client with their early caregivers. In the past, was the attachment with the mother primarily generally secure, anxious, and clingy, avoidant, emotionally distant? Same as the father. Describe present relationship with these caregivers and describe relational patterns with partner and other current relationships such as if it's dependencies, counterdependencies, and the likes. Object relations theorists examine the client's relationship with early caregivers to understand the dynamics that are creating current difficulties. In general, these patterns can be described in three ways: secure, anxious, and avoidance. Secure when clients feel safe in relationships, is comfortable with intimacy, and does not have unreasonable fears of abandonment or losing self in a relationship. Generally, people with secure relationships seek counseling in response to a specific trauma or event. Anxious, client unnecessarily worries about abandonment or rejection, often displaying jealousy and feeling insecure with the slightest criticism or even without significant praise. The anxiety that such a person experiences in relationships frequently brings him or her to counseling for help. Avoidant, clients with avoidant relational patterns often fear being swallowed or lost in a relationship and therefore remain emotionally unavailable and distant to help them preserve a sense of self. So now let's proceed to Erickson's psychosocial developmental stage. We have here the on how to conceptualize the Erickson psychosocial developmental stage wherein he described the development at each stage of the current stage of the client. Erickson's 8 stages of psychosocial development are one of the more useful developmental theories in applied clinical counseling. These stages provide a template for understanding the larger developmental concerns that may be underlying the problems clients bring to session. When viewed through a developmental lens, client problems often make more sense, and typically this insight informs more resourceful direction for counseling. For example, if a middle aged man presents with depressive symptoms, examining these symptoms in the context of the struggle for generativity versus stagnation can help focus counseling on the deeper underlying issues that may be fueling the depression. In this case, rather than simply trying to relieve symptoms, the focus of counseling can be to help him achieve a sense of purpose and contribution. Chapman explains that the developmental challenge at each stage of development is to achieve an effective ratio between the two counterbalancing dispositions, such as trust and mistrust, rather than maximizing one at the expense of the other. Ideally, a person will develop a tendency toward trust, yet also know when it is appropriate to distrust. Having blind trust in everyone and everything is not adaptive. Thus, a person strives to find a healthy balance between the two proper propensities at each stage. So this is the first stage of developmental stage of Erikson, trust versus mistrust. Applicable to the first year of two of life, infants in this stage develop a healthy balance of trust or mistrust based on their experiences with early caregivers. A healthy balance of trust translates to a general sense of hope and safety in the world while simultaneously knowing when caution is warranted. Persons who have had traumatic childhoods or whose parents overly protected them often have confusion over when, where, or and whom to trust, resulting in a sense of being either unrealistically entitled or needlessly afraid. For the second stage of Erik Erikson's stages of psychosocial development, we have autonomy versus shame and doubt. During ch- during ch- during toddlerhood, children develop a sense of autonomy and having an impact in their lives while also learning the limits of their abilities. If caretakers are either neglectful or overly protective, children become overburdened with a sense of shame and may grow up to have lingering issues that manifest as extreme self-doubt or debilitating shame and or shyness. Alternatively, if parents do not allow their children to experience shame and self doubt, these children tend to become impulsive or inconsiderate of others. So, these stage occurs between the ages of 18 months to around age to 3 years. And according to Erickson, children at this stage are focused on developing a greater sense of self-control. So, mao na pagka makulangan sila sa pag-alaga, pag makulangan sila sa pag-alaga, they tend to become impulsive. Pag masobraan naman sad kay murag maulaw na sila kay murag gina-question na nila ang ilang self or ilang decision. So for the third stage, which is initiative versus guilt, it occurs between the ages of 3 to 5 years old, which are referred to by Erickson as the play ages. During preschool and kindergarten, children transition through a developmental stage in which they develop a sense of initiative and purpose tempered by guilt when their actions hurt others. Children who have either overly protective and neglectful parents may develop a strong sense of guilt and insecurity about making their own choices, leading to risk avoidance and inhibition. Alternatively, children who have an underdeveloped awareness of guilt and how their actions affect others become overly aggressive and even ruthless. At this stage, children discovers that they are independent individuals who can control their own behavioral choices. That is why they spend a good amount of time to play with other kids and tend to the play and direct and plan the play and do various activities to develop their interpersonal skills. So the fourth stage of Erik Erikson's psychosocial development, industry versus inferiority, which occurs between the ages of 6 to 11. In the early years in school, children learn new skills, developing a sense of competence from which they build their sense of self worth. Thus, the task at this stage is to engage in industrious activities to build confidence in their abilities. Children who are frequently criticized or compared to others are found to be lacking develop a pervasive sense of inferiority. During this stage, children become capable of performing increasingly complex tasks. As a result, they strive to master new skills. Diba, adventurous man jud kay tabas sa kanang during ana nga stage, may dagan kay ta gusto tun-an. So, children who are encouraged and commended by parents and teachers develop a feeling of competence and belief in their abilities. So katong dagan kayo nag-appreciate sa ilaha kay murag mutaas pud ilang belief sa ilang sarili. Meanwhile, those who receive little or no encouragement from parents, teachers, or peers will doubt their ability to be successful. Di ba makabantay ta ng mga classmate na to dati na kanang hilumon lang, ag dili kaayo mabantayan sa mga teacher, pero baba kayo ilang tanaw silang sarili o silang abilidad. That is why they are less likely to try new things because kina-question nila ng ilang ability, and second, dili sila sure if naabay maka-appreciate. And pag mas nagalabaw ang inferiority ani nga stage, more likely mak-affect siya sa development sa later stages sa life. Next stage is the identity versus identity confusion. This is the time where we ask, who am I and how do I fit in? Erickson saw this as a time of identity development when a person first begins to answer questions such as who am I and how do I fit in. Developmentally, this is a time of exploring possible identities and social roles, which often takes the form of wild outfits, colorful hair, rebellious music, rotating social groups, and other ways to magnificently annoy one's parents. At this stage, teens may begin to feel confused or insecure about themselves and how they fit in into society. So they may experiment with different roles, activities, and behaviors. And all of those is important because it is a process to form a strong identity and develop a sense of direction in life. Additionally, teens who are not allowed to explore their identity or are made to feel guilty for not pursuing certain life paths may experience role confusion, failing to identify a clear or viable sense of identity, especially katong mga teens nga strict kayo parents na murag dili sila ginasubtan na mo try og mayang ana kay murag ginapakonsensya sila na unsa dili na ka maging ani kay maging ana na ka. Oh. Alternatively, role confusion can also take the form of failing to adopt viable social roles and instead developing a reactive identity that is based on a rebellious need to not be what someone wants, often taking the form of drug use, a radical social group, gang membership, or dropping out of high school. So, mo na siya ang mahitabo pag na ma-confuse na sila sa ilang role tapos dili sila gusto mo musunod kumbaga mag-rebel, diba? So mo ano yung mahitabo, mag drug use, mo appeal og mga gang. In such cases, teens are not able to conceive of themselves as productive members of one's family or society. Intimacy versus isolation is the sixth stage of Eric Erickson's theory of psychosocial development, which happens after the fifth stage of identity versus identity confusion. This stage takes place during young adulthood between the ages of approximately 90 and 40. So the major conflict at this stage of life centers on forming intimate, loving relationships with other people. Success at this stage leads to fulfilling relationships. Struggling at this stage, on the other hand, can result in feelings of loneliness and isolation. On to the seventh stage, which is the generativity versus stagnation, which occurs during 40 and 65. During this stage, adults strive to create or nurture things that will outlast them, often by parenting children or contributing to positive changes that benefit other people. Generativity means that you have created and accomplished things that benefits the society. Stagnation, on the other hand, refers to failure to find a way to contribute. Those who are successful during this phase will feel that they are contributing to the world by being active in their home and community. Those who fail to attain this skill will feel unproductive and uninvolved in the world. The eighth and final stage, integrity versus despair, this occurs at approximately age 65 and ends at death. The final developmental stage is an increasingly important one for counselors to understand because a great number of elderly people are receiving professional services. During this stage, people balance a sense of integrity with a sense of despair as they look back over their lives and face the inevitability of death. Those who are able to face the end of life with a greater sense of integrity and wisdom are able to integrate the experiences of their life to make meaning and accept what and who they have been. In contrast, others struggle to make peace with their lives and with life more generally and experience inconsolable sadness and loss, or alternatively develop a false sense of self importance that is conveyed as arrogance and self righteousness. At each stage of psychosocial development, people are faced with a crisis that acts as a turning point in development. Successfully resolving the crisis leads to developing a psychological virtue that contributes to overall psychological well being. At the integrity versus despair stage, the key conflict centers on questioning whether or not the individual has led a meaningful, satisfying life. Next is Adlerian style of life theme. So this is how you conceptualize the Adlerian style of life. So as you listen to your client, you have to take note when they show sign of control, superiority, pleasing, and comfort, and basic misperceptions. When working with clients, one of the most important areas that Adlerian counselors assess is a person's style of life, which can be described a person's characteristic way of thinking, doing, feeling, living, and striving. This style or map of life both shapes and is shaped by the goals we choose for ourselves, and it becomes the thread that runs through all aspects of our lives. Einstein identifies four general patterns and are commonly adopted as a style of life: control, superiority, pleasing, and comfort. So the first one on the Adlerian style of life is the control. People whose lifestyle is characterized by control frequently seek to control others, themselves, and or the situation in order to create a sense of safety and security. However, you have no doubt live long enough to realize that total control over anyone, including oneself, is not humanly possible. Thus, those whose life theme includes elements of control are frequently frustrated, often perceiving others as being resistant or difficult. These people tend to often be drawn into power struggles and into distancing themselves from people and situations over which they have no control. Counseling can help people with a controlling lifestyle accept what they cannot change and develop greater tolerance for others. Superiority, those whose life theme is characterized by superiority, not to be confused with control, are commonly referred to as perfectionists. They need to be better than others as well as right, useful, and competent. However, underneath an outer layer of what appears to be superiority, they tend to have an ongoing inner doubt about whether they are good enough. Inside, they tend to be hard on themselves, often taking on more than they can reasonably handle. Sometimes the standard of superiority gets projected onto others, especially children, and the person becomes impossible to please. Counselors can help those with superiority life themes develop more realistic expectations for themselves and others. For the pleasing, those whose life theme involves pleasing, one of the easiest to work with and most commonly seen in counseling settings, focus their energies on understanding the needs of others and finding ways to meet them. They often need everyone else to be happy before they can be happy, thus making their happiness dependent on how they are treated by others. Typically, a person with a pleasing lifestyle gives and gives and gives, and then at a certain point becomes resentful. In some cases, other takes advantage of them or abuse them. In other cases, those around them are unaware of the sacrifices they are making. Their fear of rejection and habit of pleasing others at the expense of their own integrity can cause significant hardship in their lives. In counseling, they can learn to set healthy boundaries and find ways to assert their needs in relationships while still respecting those of others. And lastly, comfort. Those whose life theme involves comfort seek comfort at the expense of taking the risk involved with pursuing life goals and achievement. They tend to avoid the stress of responsibility and delayed reward, often due to a sense of inadequacy of fear or fear of failure. In moderation, seeking comforts leads to underachieving, while in its extreme, it may take the form of addiction. Counselors can help those with this theme to take small steps toward their goals, emphasizing small successes along the way. Basic mistake is like our own personal map of the universe pa naman siya timurag ato ang private logic na na-form na to gikan pa sa atong earliest experiences pero sa kana na to na private logic na atay murag basic mistakes or perceptions about the world or how the life works or how the world works that are inaccurate. But, however inaccurate that is, basic mistakes are individual and unique. Thus, assessing the clients requires listening carefully to what they say and asking about their thinking process in situations related to the presenting problem. With careful listening, astute observations, and probing questions, counselors can help clients identify basic mistake misperceptions that contribute to their current concerns. Example include the following: overgeneralizations. People cannot be trusted, or no one cares about me. Unrealistic expectations. I should always be happy. Life should be easy. Unsustainable goals. Everyone must be happy for me to be happy. I must always be the best at what I do. Misperceptions about life or God. Life should be fair. God will give me what I want. Denying one's worth. I will never be good enough. I am not worth living. Loving. Problematic values. I must get to the top at any cost. I do not apologize for my actions. So, mo na siya example sa basic mistakes na dapat mabantayan sa counselors while listening carefully to their clients when you are going to use the Adlerian style of life theme.
Hi. Okay. Humanistic existential conceptualization. In humanistic approaches to counseling, this focuses on the person's ability to experience and express one's authentic self. So these are discussed in following sections. First, problems. Are problems perceived as internal or external? Clients will be asked if the problems are caused by internal or the external matter. So, clients before the counseling process tend to blame other people or some situation as the reason or the cause of their problems. Interestingly, as individuals advance toward more prominent genuineness, they start to depict issues as they're expecting to make some move or act contrastingly to a circumstance. Agency and responsibility. So we will be able to know if the client has a sense of agency and is responsible to the situation or tend to blame others or reporting feeling like a victim. So they describe events happening to them with others serving as the agents in the story. Recognition and expression of feelings. Counselors will really ask some questions like, how do you feel? In the beginning of the counseling, clients have extreme difficulty on identifying their true emotions. So, through this counseling process, they learn to identify and experience their true emotions. Here and now experiencing. Once a counselor has helped a client to more readily identify their emotions, the client will be able to experience and express emotions as they arise in the present moment. For example, if a client gets disappointing news or not about getting a job or promotion, so he or she can feel the disappointment and aware that he is feeling the disappointment yet does not overact by getting angry, depressed, or self-harming. Personal personal contracts personal constructs and fights. So the more rigidly one holds to a personal construct, the more limited one's life becomes because so much energy must go toward maintaining this identity. Thus, humanistic counselors look for more tentatively held ideas of self and personhood as a sign of living more authentically. Complexity and contradictions. So, we are all riddled with the contradictions, complexities, and confusion. So, as a person becomes more self aware, the better able one is to see these contradictions and accept them as a part of what it means to be human. Shoulds. Yeah, every culture has these shoulds. In fact, in each culture is a list of shoulds. The key is how one relates to this. So if a person swallows them whole and contorts themselves to fit into these shoulds, the authentic self has little room for expression. Instead, the ideal is to thoughtfully balance one's need for authentic self-expression with the socially imposed shoulds. Someone who flaunts going against cultural norms is not expressing the authentic self, but rather finding identity by being a reactive rebel who is still defined by socially imposed shoulds, which is in negative relief. Acceptance of others. Accepting imperfection in others tends to occur when one begins to accept it in oneself. So, humanistic counselors carefully assess clients' abilities to accept others and to modify their expectations of others to be more realistic. So the more you are in relationship with other people, the more you realize that such perfection is not possible. Last, trust of self. So people who experience their identity as a stable thing are attached to labels, routines, status, objects, and anything else that symbolizes their identities. So as a person becomes more self-actualized, these things matter less and less, and a person becomes more comfortable with the idea that identity is fluid and evolving. Next, existential analysis. Existential analysis can be defined as a phenomenological and a person-oriented psychotherapy with the aim of leading the person to mentally and emotionally free experiences. to facilitate authentic decisions, and to bring about a truly responsible way of dealing with life and the world. Thus, existential analysis can be applied in cases of psychosocial, psychosomatic, and psychologically caused disturbances in experience and um, behavior. There are two initial areas for assessment. First, sources of life meaning. So what inspires the client and makes him or her feel whole and fulfilled. Second, satisfaction with and clarity of life direction. Does the client have a clear sense of purpose and direction for his or her life? Or is life on or off track? So, counselors really need to understand where clients find meaning and purpose in order to effectively guide treatment and help the client achieve greater levels of happiness. So, existential analysis is also helpful and useful when working with certain types of clients. For example, when working with clients who have suicidal feelings, counselor can assess for sources of life meaning and life satisfaction in order to determine how serious the threat is and how best to motivate clients to value life again. Next, gestalt contact boundary disturbances. In gestalt therapy, transference is viewed as a contact boundary disturbance which impairs the patient's ability to accurately perceive the present therapy situation. So the boundary disturbances in gestalt therapy most closely related to the analytic notion of transference, or projection, interjection, and confluence. So it involves a continuum of seven phases, beginning with initial perception, moving toward direct encounter, and ending in withdrawal. So first, sensation or perception. Organism perceives input from environment. So for example, ignoring increasing violence by partner in fights, just another way of avoiding contact with an emotional trigger. Second, awareness. For example, a dad telling his son, boys don't cry. So this is an idea that the person might take in from their environment and internalize into their way of thinking. So the resistance process of this is introjection. Next, excitement or mobilization. The resistance process is projection. For example, a husband who has a hostile nature might attribute this hostility to his wife and say she has an anger management problem. So, encounter or action. The organism takes action to engage the other. So, resistance process is retroflexion. For example, rather than creating conflict with others, you're focusing on criticism and self. So this might include self-harm, like cutting or hitting one's head against a wall over and over. Interaction and full contact. A back and forth exchange happens. So the self becomes part of we. The resistance process, deflection, it is to avoid direct contact with another or self. So for example, um, working long hours to avoid spouse or avoiding home emotions. Number six, assimilation or integration. So the organism takes in and integrates new information, behavior, and so on. So egotism, egotism. So for example, claiming to be in love but not being open to changing self to meet needs of relationship. Lastly, differentiation or withdrawal. So the organism withdraws from contact and returns to its uh, individual state. For example, agreeing with spouse to extent that one no longer allows self to have a divergent options. So when assessing clients, Gestalt counselors look for where their clients are stuck in the cycle of making contact and direct their interventions to encourage clients to make contact and complete the encounter cycle. Cognitive behavioral conceptualization. Baseline assessment. So baseline assessment provides information on the situation the campaign aims to change. So there are steps to baseline assessment. First step, define the problem, behavior in specific. So define the problem behavior in specific, observable behaviors that are easily counted. For example, to measure depression, you could measure any of the following: hours per day with depressed mood, B, days per week with mild, moderate, or severe depressed mood, or C, days per week avoiding social contact and or normal activities. Step 2, get a baseline. So create a chart for the client that collects the following data, which are frequency of problem of behavior. So this is measured in minutes, hours, days, or weeks. Duration and or severity of each episode. So duration can be in minutes or hours. So severity is typically measured as mild, moderate, or severe. Context in which the behavior happens. It could be a place, a relationship, timing, or some other potentially contextual trigger for the behavior. Events before each episode. It is used to identify potential triggers, for example, rain, an argument. Events after each episode. It is used to identify potential reinforcement and or clarify trigger of the behavior. For example, when your husband comes home, the wife's anxiety diminishes. So this is a sample of baseline assessment chart. So the client then completes the chart for a period of 1 to 4 weeks to get the baseline assessment of the problem behavior. This becomes the measuring point for progress once treatment commences so that progress can be closely measured. ABC analysis of irrational beliefs. So the ABC model is a basic CBT technique. It's a framework that assumes your beliefs about a specific event affect how you react to that event. So this is a tool that can help people examine behaviors they want to change. So the triggers behind those behaviors and the impact of those behaviors on negative or maladaptive patterns. So in this case, A, the activating event, triggers B, a belief that results in C, consequence. So the consequences are essentially the presenting problem for which the client is seeking help. So, for example, A. Uh, you and your boyfriend had a fight, and then B, which triggers a B, you thought that your relationship is in trouble or no one will love you, which results to feeling depressed or acting desperate or keep on texting every 2 minutes or maybe eating a pint of ice cream. So the role of the counselor is to help identify the B, which is the unhelpful belief, because most clients experience the chain of events as A to C and describe it as I am depressed because my boyfriend and I had a fight. Not I am depressed because I believe no one will ever love me. Next, schema analysis. It is another common cognitive assessment technique in schema analysis. This is pioneered by Aaron Beck. Assessing unhelpful beliefs using Beck's categorization of schemas can be very helpful in the counseling process by naming the beliefs more concretely and by identifying habitual patterns of thought. Arbitrary interference. So, drawing conclusions without sufficient or relevant evidence, including pessimism and catastrophizing. So, for example, assuming that someone is angry with you just because they do not return a phone call when expected. Selective abstraction, making assumptions based on certain facts while ignoring other, usually more positive facts. For example, assuming that you will lose a long-term friend because of a minor miscommunication. Overgeneralization, holding extreme beliefs based on relatively little data. Example, because I was not good a soccer player in elementary school, therefore I am terrible at all sports. So next, magnification and minimization. Overemphasizing overemphasizing or underemphasizing a particular fact and drawing inaccurate conclusions, like making assumptions that are based on an unrepresentative data set. For example, believing that no one thinks you are beautiful because of a comment that one person made. Like, comment siya ng hindi maganda. Next, personalization. Assuming that an external event or someone else's action somehow says something about you. For example, believing something is wrong with you because a partner cheats on you. So, parang naisip mo na, may something sa akin, siguro, may pagkukulang ako, ganon. Absolutist or dichotomous thinking, categorizing things as all good or all bad, or as either or extremes. For example, either she loves me or she doesn't. Next, mislabeling, unfairly characterizing one's entire identity on the basis of limited events. For example, I am a terrible counselor one client, because one client did not return for a second session. Then last, mind reading, believing that you know what another person is thinking. So example, I know he does not like me because of the look on his face when I'm at the meetings. So so, ano din, assuming. So that's all for my part to the next reporter, Rabasas.
Good day everyone, I am Maria Christine N. Trabasas and I'm gonna discuss this conceptualization. It tackles about the family life circle stage and the boundaries. So the first one is the stage of family life circle development. So from single adult to marriage, the families with young children, the families with adolescent children, the launching children, and the family in later life. So the single adult, the individual is in the stage the individual starting to live on their own, and also the stage of accepting emotional and financial responsibility for self. Next one is the marriage. In this stage, the couple commits to new system, starting to have a family on their own and realigning boundaries with family and friends. Next one is the families with young children. So in this stage, the couples adjust marriage to make space for children and join in child rearing tasks, and also realigning boundaries with parents and grandparents. Next one is the families with adolescent children. In this stage, the couple adjusting parental boundaries to increase freedom and responsibility for adolescents and refocus on marriage and career life. Next one is the launching children. In this stage, the couple renegotiating marital subsystem and developing adult-to-adult relationship with children and coping with aging parents. Next one is the family in later life, accepting the shift of generational rules and coping with loss of abilities, and middle generation takes more central role and creating space for wisdom for elderly. The next one is the interpersonal boundaries. So boundaries are the rules for negotiating interpersonal closeness and distance. These rules are generally unspoken and unfold as two people interact over time, each defining when, where, and how he or she prefers to relate to the other. The structural counselor characterizes boundaries in one of three ways: clear, diffuse, or rigid, all of which are strongly influenced by culture. So, the clear boundaries and the cultural variance. So, clear boundaries refers to a range of possible ways couples can negotiate a healthy balance between closeness and separation. Cultural factors shape how much closeness versus separation is preferred. For the collectivist culture, they tend toward greater degree of closeness, and for the individualistic cultures, they tend to value greater independence. The best way to determine if a couple's boundaries are clear is to determine whether symptoms have developed in the individual, couple, or family. For a relationship to weather the test of time, couples, families, and even friends must constantly renegotiate their boundaries to adjust to each person's evolving needs. The more flexible people are in negotiating these rules, the more successful they will be in adjusting to life, transition, and setback. Next one is the enmesh and diffuse boundaries. When a couple or family begins to overvalue togetherness at the expense of respecting the individuality of each, their boundaries become diffuse and relationship become enmeshed. In this relationship, individuals may feel that they are being suffocated, that they lack freedom, or that they are not cared for enough. Couples with diffuse boundaries may also have diffuse boundaries with their children, families of origin, and friends, resulting in these outside others becoming overly involved in one or both of the partner's lives. Next one is the disengaged rigid boundaries. When relationship emphasize independence over togetherness, boundaries can become rigid and the relationship disengage. In this relationship, people may not allow others to influence them, often choosing careers over relationship priorities, and may frequently have minimal emotional connection. In couples partnership that are disengaged, one or the other may compensate for distance in a couple relationship by having diffuse boundaries with children, friends, family, or an outside love interest. So, these are the questions for assessing boundaries. Here are some sample questions to think about while working with an individual, couple, or family to assess boundaries. So, the first question is, does the couple have clear couple boundaries that are distinct from their parenting and family of origin relationship? Or does the couple spend time alone, not talking about the children? Or the family member experience anxiety or frustration when there is a difference of opinion? So the next one is the triangles correlation, problem subsystem, and triangles. So the problem system are identified in most systematic family counseling approaches. Triangles cover correlation and cross-generational correlation. All refers to a similar systematic process. Tension between two people is resolved by drawing in a third person to stabilize the original dyad. Many counselors include inanimate object or other processes as potential third in the triangulation process, such as drinking, drug use, work, hobbies, and so on, that are used to help one or both partners move their internal stress at the expense of the relationship. The next one is the hierarchy between child and parents. A key area in assessing parent and child relationship is the parent-child hierarchy. Generally, if the child is exhibiting symptoms or there are problems in the parent-child relationship, there is some problem in the hierarchical structure, either an excessive or an insufficient parental hierarchy given the family's current socio-cultural context. Immigrant families most always have two different sets of cultural norms for parenting hierarchy, the traditional and the current cultural context, resulting in a difficult task of finding a balance between the two. Assessing hierarchy is critical because it tells the counselor where and how to intervene. In the cases where the parental hierarchy is too rigid, the counselor works with the parents to soften this, develop a stronger personal relationship with the child, and set developmentally and culturally appropriate expectation. And for the other hand, if there is not in a parental hierarchy, the counselor work with the parents to increase their consistency with consequences and to increase their attention to setting limits and rules. Thus, the same set of symptoms can require very different intervention. The next one is the complementary pattern. So the complementary patterns characterize most couple relationship to a certain degree and can also characterize sibling relationship, friendship, and other relationship. Complementary in this case refers to each person taking a opposite or complementary rules that exist in a range from functional and problematic. So the next one is the intergenerational pattern. So assessing for intergenerational pattern is easiest when using the genogram, which provides a visual map of intergenerational patterns. Counselors can create a comprehensive genograms and maps that map numerous intergenerational patterns or problems to learn how family members have dealt with similar problems across generation. So, the patterns that frequently include in genograms are the following. The first one is the substance and alcohol abuse and dependence. or another is sexual, physical, and emotional abuse, and so on. Next one is the postmodern feminist conceptualization, the solutions and unique outcomes. Next one is the attempted solution that did not work. When assessing solution, counselors needs to assess two kinds, those that have worked and those that have not. The Mental Research Institute group and cognitive behavioral therapy counselors are best known for assessing that has not worked, although they use this in different ways when they intervene. So the next one is the previous solution that did work or unique outcomes. When assessing previous solution that helped is much harder because most clients are less aware of when the problem is not a problem and how they have kept things from getting worse. Solution-focused and narrative counselor have developed most of the assessment strategies for assessing that have worked. So next one is the miracle questions. So the original solution generating question, the miracle question serves to both conceptualize and assess, and as set goals in solution-based counseling, the question goes as follows. So the miracle questions, it is example, imagine that you go home tonight and during the middle of the night, a miracle happened. All of the problem you came here is to resolve a miraculously resolved. However, when you wake up, you have no idea the miracle has occurred. What are some of the first things you would notice that would be different? How would you know that the problem that brought you here were resolved? The key to successfully using this question to conceptualize a case involves emphasizing that a miracle isn't just any old miracle but that is specifically resolved problems that brought you here today, and getting specific behavioral description of what is different. Next one is the narrative, dominant discourse, and diversity. So dominant discourse, informing definition of problem, the ethnical, class, and religious discourse. How do the cultural discourse inform what is perceived as a problem and the possible solution? Next one is the gender and sexuality discourse. How do the gender sexual discourse inform what is perceived as a problem and the possible solution? Next one is the community, school, and extended family discourse. How do other important community discourse inform what is perceived as a problem and a possible solution? Identity narrative. How has the problem shaped each other's or each client's identity? Next one is the local or preferred discourse. What is the client's preferred identity, narrative, and narrative about the problem? Are the local alternative discourse about the problem that are preferred? Next, assessing dominant social discourse in which a client's problems are embedded often creates a broader and new perspective on a client's situation. Common dominant discourse or broader narratives that informs clients' lives includes the following: culture, race, ethnicity, and imagination. Next one, the gender, sexual orientation, and sexual preferences. Next one is the family of origin experiences such as alcoholism, sexual abuse, adoption, and so on. Next one is the identity narrative. When a client comes for counseling, the problem discourse has almost always become a significant part of one or more person's identity, narrative, and story and narrative. The story people tell themselves as who they are. Assessing this early in the process is useful to understand how to engage and motivate each person. Next one is the local and preferred discourse. Local discourse are the stories that occur at the local level. These narratives often are built on personal beliefs and unique interpretations and often contradict or significantly modify dominant discourse. Most often, local discourse are a person's personal truth that they have been hiding or are ashamed of because of anticipated disapproval from others. Local discourse can address common subculture values such as valuing certain religious or sexual practices, or highly unique to an individual such as wanting to sell everything and travel the world. Local discourse are often the source of preferred discourse in narrative counseling, which are the preferred versions of one's life and identity to serve as a goal in narrative counseling. So next one. So that's